Again. As some of you may have seen on Twitter today, I may be a little quieter for a few days because I'm trying to wrap up a book I've been working on actually. But just had kind of I don't know, a splinter in my brain or just something that was bugging me that I saw over the weekend. And you can see here, I'm going to talk about goodwill impairment and will AMC be impacted by goodwill impairment? I'm going to talk about goodwill accounting, and specifically, I want to talk about whether you were lied to. I'm not even going to talk about where this came from because it's just frankly not worth it, in my opinion. But, what I'm here for, what I'm about is not feuds and drama and arguments. What I'm here for is facts. That's just kind of how I'm wired. And some of you have started following me probably. Maybe you're wired the same way too, and you're a little tired of drama, and you'd rather just give me the data, give me the facts. So we're going to stick to that today. I'm just going to give you those facts. I'm going to source them, and just encourage you to never trust me, bro. So let's just talk about what I'm going to cover. First off, I will cover something that I saw over the weekend, what apes were being told. I will talk about what goodwill actually is. How does goodwill relate to stock price? When is there something called a goodwill impairment, and even what is that? I'll show you a scenario on that. How does that impact cash, and does that have any kind of impact on any sort of bankruptcy risk? What about AMC specifically? Let's just talk about AMC's situation, and then kind of a summary and takeaway. But as always, I'm going to give links, so you do not have to trust me. You can go fact check this yourself. All right, so what were you told? So what happened was somewhere over the weekend, another ape friend of mine had seen something and just said, hey, could you check this out? I'm kind of curious about this. So watched it. And frankly, in the thing I was watching, I have a Word document with about 25 things that were just factual inaccuracies that I can prove are false. Just as I will today, like I said, I'll give links so you don't have to even trust me. You can go find out for yourself. But you were told if the stock goes down, or the stonk here, I'm saying, you could see a costly goodwill impairment, and that would cause so many problems for AMC that it's going to basically feed on itself, and you might even need more dilution to recover. And oh no, sky's falling kind of a statement. So that sounds really scary, but I think we should ask ourselves if that's true before we get scared, right? I don't give someone else authority over my emotions. I maintain my own authority over that. So time for DD, right? Like someone says something big and scary, or even someone says something awesome and exciting. Let's fact check that. All right, so first things first. Let's fact check me. I'm not an accountant, okay? I've told you guys a little bit about me. I do have 2 master's degrees in business. That does not make me an accountant. I'm a business professional, and I have the internet just like you guys. So that does not make me an expert in this space, because what I'm talking about here is accounting. So I'm not a CPA. I'm not a tax professional. You should fact check me. But I have taken some master's level accounting classes. I have a little bit of knowledge in the space. And like I said, I have the internet. So, that's what DD is all about, right? We ask questions of each other. We ask questions of the internet. We go study. We get answers. So I'm going to tell you the answers I found. I'm going to give you the sources I found them in, and just give you the opportunity to sort of decide for yourself. But I just want to say here, just clearly, I've told you what I'm not. You should always question your sources. Fact check, fact check, fact check. And in particular, in this case, the video I saw, someone was speaking incredibly confidently. You can sound real confident. That doesn't make you right. So don't just say, well, someone's got a video and they're on the internet and they sound confident, so, oh no. Check sources, check facts. And it takes more than sleeping in a Holiday Inn or sounding confident to be an expert. Sounding confident does not make you an expert. Being right does. Okay, so what is goodwill even? Let's just talk about this first so we can have a right understanding of what we're even talking about. Goodwill, and I'm going to show you a scenario. I'll try to speak in plain English here. But this is actually from a source that I'm going to link at the end that is sort of guiding corporations on how to do accounting. It's like a corporate accounting website. Okay, so goodwill is created when you buy something that for more than it was kind of worth in the market. And why would that happen? So let's say you're a good manager of a company and you believe maybe something offers you strategic value to your company, right? So that's kind of something intangible. Strategic value is not necessarily on the books at the time you buy it. Or you just think you're such a good manager, you could improve the future cash flows of this thing. I'm going to give you, like I said, some real life examples. So you buy something, let's say it's worth 8 million, but you buy it for 10 million. because maybe you just really wanted it and you had to pay a little bit of extra to pry it out of someone else's hands. Well, the way that accounting works is you should reflect fair market value of your assets on something called the balance sheet. So you have these assets, you have these liabilities, and we're going to talk more about that. But so to show the fair value, you kind of separate out, here's this chunk that I paid extra, and here was the actual value of the asset. This chunk that I paid extra is called goodwill, and you got to carry that on your balance sheet so you can kind of keep some visibility into your finances. And this is really about publicly traded stock companies. Privately traded companies do have this same issue, but it's handled a little bit differently, and there's a little more leeway. Okay, so how does goodwill relate to the stock price? Actually, if you research, you can just see what I've highlighted here. This is straight from Investopedia. You can go find much more, let's say, kind of hard sources than Investopedia too, but I just wanted to use this one for a simple example. No strong or clear-cut evidence links goodwill to stock price movement. Now, first of all, I'm going to talk about goodwill impairment and how that actually could relate. But in general, I just want you to see this just clearly as a top-level idea. No strong or clear-cut evidence links goodwill to stock price movement, even though you were told this weekend it does. And by the way, I'm going to also tell you how, I don't swear much, so let's just say bass-ackwards, you were told about how goodwill and the stock price were going to interact with each other. You were told the stock price would cause a goodwill impairment, which would cause new problems, and that's completely backwards. That's not how it works at all. So we'll go through this. I'll kind of explain why. All right, so you were told about goodwill impairment. What the heck is that? When does it happen? So, I told you that maybe you bought an asset that was worth $8 million, but you bought it for 10. And then what happens if, let's say that was like a factory or something, and you're buying it because you believe you can create future cash flows. You can create earnings, value with that. And let's say just, I don't know, the world shifts under your feet and all of a sudden no one wants the stuff your factory was making. Well, now it's not even worth what it used to be worth, much less what you also paid for it. So you've got to kind of reflect on your books that you own this thing that's not worth as much as what it was worth when you bought it. That's basically the simple English for that. So you can see this language here, also from Investopedia. Goodwill impairment occurs when a company decides to pay more than book value for acquisition of an asset, but then the value of that asset declines. So I just kind of gave you a bit of an example of how that happens. Again, I'm going to give you a scenario to just kind of try to make that clear. So actually, let's do that. I kind of just said that. Let's say you are a leader of a company and you buy this like widget factory, any kind of factory you want, for 10 million bucks, but it was valued at 8. And you value this asset based on the cash it can generate now and in the future. And so there's something called the net present value or the time value of money. And you kind of look at out, it can depend on what kind of asset you're looking at and how many years out you'll look. And you say, all right, over the next however many years, it's going to bring this much cash in. And I just believe there's, our ability to improve this business. And so we justify it being worth a certain amount. But let's say it's sometime later and this factory's had a bunch of problems, or maybe your consumer base disappeared, like nobody wants what you make anymore. And so it's only generating $6 million of cash. It used to be, valued at $8 million. Now it's not even worth the 8, much less the 10 you paid for it. So you take this hit that you show as an expense, as a one-time expense. That's another thing that's important to know. It's a one-time expense. And we should talk in a minute on what does that mean to your cash, and we will. So another way to look at the same scenario, just I'm screenshotting this because this is going to be in a link that I'm going to give you. This is from another accounting website. So you can see in this case, like a company buys something for 15 million. It was actually only valued at 10 million. So there's this $5 million of goodwill on the balance sheet. And then you do this test, like, is it really still worth what it was valued at? And, is it starting to be worth what I paid for it? And in this case, they say, whoops, it was worth 10 when I bought it. It's now only worth 7. So I have this impairment of this $3 million. And so you can see what happens. First off, you reflect that on the balance sheet. Someday maybe I'll show you how to read a balance sheet. I know another ape who's actually maybe working on something like that. And she's extremely intelligent, so it'd be awesome if she does that too. So we'll see. Apes are kind of working on, sharing out with you guys how to read this stuff. But so you reflect this on the balance sheet. So you've got to take this asset. I said the balance sheet has assets and liabilities. So you take this asset and you say it's not worth as much as it used to be. I got to bring it down. So goodwill, you actually bring down your goodwill. You kind of take it out of there. And then that's impacting your income statement. So you guys, like when we do these earnings releases, every earnings release has an income statement and has a balance sheet. And so this income statement, that reduction to the asset is actually shown as an expense. So you would see earnings take a big hit. Oh, crud, earnings were way down. There's this asset impairment. But notice, this is really, really, really important here. The impairment charge is a non-cash expense. This is just a write down on the books. This is not cash going out the door. There is no cash flow implication to this. It is not a cash expense. I cannot say that enough. It's a non-cash expense. So we're going to talk about why that matters. So how does goodwill impact cash? Well, I just told you. Zilch, zero, nada, none, nope, nuh-uh, not going to happen. So I just can't be clear enough. You were told that, oh my gosh, the stock price is going to go down, and then you're going to have to take a goodwill impairment, and then that's going to cause a problem, so you're going to have to dilute. But by the way, dilution is selling of shares for cash. So you're being told, look out, look out, look out, bankruptcy risk. But it's not even a cash expense. And what's more, I'm going to talk to you about why, it was totally backwards the way that you were told that it would happen. So does this push a company towards bankruptcy? Well, first of all, it does not impact cash. I just told you that. Now, I want to be fair. Changes to something called your asset to liability formulas, there's various ways that companies can look at that. So that could potentially impact, like, say, lending. If a lender sees that you've got heavy liabilities, but you don't really have a lot of great assets behind that, you can start to not look as healthy. So you'll hear people talk about a healthy balance sheet. You've heard Adam talk about deleveraging and getting AMC to a healthy balance sheet. He's getting us to a place where lenders will be a lot more friendly. People giving leases might be more friendly. Basically, when you have a healthy balance sheet, what it looks like is you're doing a good job capitalizing a company. You're turning your assets into future cash, and you're getting your liabilities low enough that you kind of have a good balance. That's why it's called a balance sheet. And it does not impact cash. Have I said that yet? Okay, but let's talk a little bit about AMC. So I mentioned goodwill kind of happens, a goodwill impairment happens when an asset no longer is going to generate the cash you expected it to generate. So let's just talk about what's happening at AMC. Well, first let's look versus pre-COVID, okay? Ticket prices are actually up per person. Every time a person goes, and I can source this in maybe another video. Actually, you can go to some of my old videos. It is sourced. I'm taking this straight from their financials. You can absolutely fact check me that over time, or if say you compare it back to 2019, ticket prices are significantly up per person. It's not even close. It's a lot. Attendance per movie is up. Again, you can see this in their earnings. You don't need to trust me. You could actually see this just on any, like Box Office Mojo is a website where you can see, okay, how many movies are there? What's the total attendance and all of that? And the attendance you can also get from AMC's earnings as well. So you can fact check that, but attendance per movie is up versus pre-COVID. Food and beverage spending per person is up. Again, that's in AMC's financials. And I will go ahead and probably walk you through that and source that in another video. But if you don't want to trust me, just go to their earnings reports. You can just check those. And then there are more movies coming in 2023 than we just had last year. There are even more than in 24 than there are in 23. I'm going to give you a link where you can kind of go check up on some of that too and see what's coming. And so in general, if you're having more movies, if you're having more people per movie, if when people come, they're spending more on tickets than they used to, and when people come, they're buying more food than they used to, that's actually improving cash flows. So I just told you the scenario where you have goodwill impairment is when your cash flows are going down, or for some reason maybe the whole economy has turned away from your goods and what you're providing. In this case, we're going the opposite direction. So I don't know why I would have someone stare me in the face and look at me seriously and say I should expect a goodwill impairment. That's not adding up for me. And then so I flashed up here. This is my forecast, so this you definitely should fact check. I've had other videos where I've shown you how I kind of got to this. This is based on the actual list of movies coming out, some industry forecasts, a little bit of my own forecasts, and I've talked about that enough in some other videos. I won't do that here. But even if you say I'm wrong, let's just say at least directionally you understand there's more movies coming. We're clearly up and to the right in terms of the movie industry. So you can see calendar year 21, 22, 23, 24. So you can see it's growing pretty fast. Obviously, the growth rate is slowing because at first we were growing over kind of lockdowns and all of that. Um, but so, yeah, fact check me a little bit on this, but it's pretty clear the movie industry is growing. And so cash flows for a theater distribution network would be growing. So let's just kind of finally summarize this, and then let's talk about a takeaway. First of all, goodwill is just like a value capture. You got to show this value on the balance sheet because a company got an asset for more than it was worth. Okay, that's just kind of a super simple definition of goodwill. Goodwill impairment happens when the asset can't be expected to live up to the future cash flows required to kind of keep that value going. So it basically is when you just say, oh man, it's just not really worth what we paid for it, and we need to find a way to have our financials look correct. So it's a non-cash transaction. We talked about that. It's just updating the assets on the balance sheet, and then you show it as an expense in your earnings, but it's a one-time expense. You're not writing a check to anybody. There is no cash going out the door. And then finally, it's unrelated to the stock price. So there is some weak correlation I mentioned. If a company's assets really started looking bad, you can kind of hear things called distressed assets and stuff. Obviously, that's not healthy. So I would even argue, sure, it could relate to the stock price, but that's after the goodwill impairment transaction. You were told the stock price going down would cause the goodwill impairment to happen, and that's just provably, demonstrably false. Ask any accountant out there, and they'll just laugh in your face if you try to tell them that's how it works. So you have a source that's telling you something that is provably false, and I'm about to just give you those links. Okay, so takeaways. Sorry, this should say 2 at the top of the slide, but who cares? Okay, you were told the stock going down would force goodwill impairment and would increase bankruptcy risk. So false. That's not how this works at all. Goodwill impairment has to do with assets and their ability to generate cash. It has nothing to do with the stock price. That's just a bajillion% wrong. You were also told that AMC cash flows are declining. That's false. Just go look at recent financial filings, look at the movie industry forecast, and think about, even I'm not going to talk about any other revenue streams, but just movies and food and beverage. You can just see clearly in terms of where the industry is going, and in terms of some new profitable locations that were added. I've talked before about the Boston ArcLight. That's a brand new facility that's not even generating cash yet. That starts this spring, right in time for all of these movies to come out. What's more, Saudi Arabia, we've talked about, that's just checks coming in. AMC does not even operate those properties. It's only profit because you're just getting a check written to you for use of the name. Okay, but the other takeaway then is just always fact check. Always do your DD, and always do, I said win sauce. A friend of mine kind of jokes that way, but ask for sources. The video I was made to watch, not made to watch, I did it for a friend, but there was not a single source given. It was just looking at you and speaking condescendingly as though I know what I'm talking about and you just need to listen to me. That's literally the definition of trust me, bro. And around here, we don't trust bros. We want sources. Okay, so here's your links. Screenshot this. Sorry again that this isn't clickable, but screenshot this, go to these, learn for yourself, read for yourself. You can see. I've given you the list of movies coming because I've referenced that in a couple of videos. Go check out what's coming. You can see it by date. So you can even start to think about what's in which quarters. I've got much more detailed forecasts where I go through that. Here's the Corporate Finance Institute. Here's accountingtools.com. Here's Investopedia on this topic. So you can see all of these are goodwill impairment links. Even just Google for yourself. You can go find a lot of this. But what I would really say is definitely, here's a recommended Google search I would even say if you want to go deeper. Look up something called GAAP, GAAP accounting, and look up, so just say like Goodwill GAAP accounting. That is the sort of standards and rules and regulations that American accounting is held to. You have something different in Europe, but GAAP is generally understood worldwide. Everyone knows what GAAP is. And that's just, if you were to Google GAAP accounting, goodwill impairment, you're going to quickly find that what you were told is just a flat out lie. The stock going down has nothing to do with goodwill impairment. And frankly, I've kind of laid out a case, very high level case. I admit I'm not giving you a ton behind my forecasts here, but laid out a case, even just if you look at the movie industry, why cash flows are improving, goodwill impairments caused by cash flows worsening. So one, you were given a false understanding of why goodwill impairment would occur, and you were giving a false understanding about if goodwill impairment would even occur. So I think the lesson is always, I'll just kind of go back, fact check, do your DD, demand sources, no trust me bros around here. You know that I'm super duper bullish about AMC, so let's go.